Silas Ward had known more suffering than most men in his 43 years, but nothing could have readied him to see the scars on Coraline's back. That morning, as she stretched up to dust a high shelf, her dress cinched just tight enough to show a grim pattern, circular burn marks, purposeful and cruel. Someone had branded her, repeatedly, with scorching accuracy. He stood in the doorway to his small ranch house, silently observing this woman, this stranger, who'd been in his home for just 3 days. Cora walked with the deliberate quiet of a person who'd spent too many years going out of their way not to be seen. Sunlight streaming through the window picked up the brutal fact on her shoulders, a fact that Silas's gut protested. He cleared his throat softly. She whirled around, startled, pulling her collar up with trembling hands, her eyes wide with terror. "Mississippi Lane," he said, his tone soothing, though anger seethed beneath. "How long have you borne those scars?" She moved back into the wall, her complexion white. "I don't understand what you're saying, Mr. Ward. I was simply cleaning, like you requested." But Silas had witnessed enough hurt animals over the years to recognize the telltale signs. How she winced, how her eyes flicked toward the door, how her hands shook. The burns were recent, weeks old at most, still pink-edged. "Someone did that to you," he said quietly. "Not accidentally. That was a hot brand. Applied on purpose." Her control shattered. Tears slipped soundlessly down her face as she huddled against the wall, wanting to vanish. "Please don't send me away," she begged. "I'll work. I won't be any trouble. I'll stay out of your way." That wasn't fear of job loss. That was survival. Silas put down his coffee with caution. "I'm not sending you anywhere, Mississippi Lane, but I have to know who did this to you." Her gaze darted toward the window, racing over the horizon as if waiting for someone to burst through it. When she turned back, her words were little more than a whisper. "If they find out that I said anything, that they know you've seen." She didn't have to complete the sentence. The terror in her eyes was enough. Silas had a chill certainty wash over his stomach. Whatever this was, it wasn't finished. Not yet. Cora sat at the kitchen table, trembling, and wrapped her hands around the mug of coffee Silas extended to her. Minutes ticked by in silence until she finally spoke, softly, fragmented. "Him name's Malachi Brooks. He's the owner of the Silver Dollar Saloon. Biggest in town. He has connections. With girls. Girls with no place else to go." Silas's jaw clamped into a hard line. He'd heard of Brooks, a man who earned his living in gray alleys. Games, whiskey, and whatever. Predator in nice suits. "Reminders," he said. She said, gazing into the inky spin of her coffee. "Reminders of what boys do to girls who talk, or who run, or who don't obey." Silas examined her. She held her left shoulder slightly higher, still protecting it. "How many others?" he asked. "6 I know of. Perhaps more." She raised her eyes, tinged with hope and terror. "You're a good man, Mr. Ward, but Malachi Brooks has contacts everywhere. The sheriff will never touch him. The judge is in debt to him. Even the preacher takes a pass. He contributes to the church." Silas looked away from the window, out across the land he'd invested 15 years of his life in. This was a place he'd built himself. Honest, clean. But having heard Cora's tale, everything changed. "How'd you escape?" "Last month there was a fire. Just the stove. Caught some curtains. Nothing important. But in the panic I fled. I've been on foot ever since, barn to barn, avoiding roads. Then I read your advertisement for assistance in a newspaper. I thought, perhaps this could be an opportunity for a fresh beginning." Her words trailed off as a new noise echoed around her. The thudding of hooves. Horses. Galloping. Silas ran to the window. For riders. Over the top of the hill. Coming right for the house. "It's them," she whispered, edging back through the kitchen doorway. "He found me. He always said he would. No one gets away from him." The black coat of the lead rider made him stand out, and Silas could even see from a distance that this was Malachi Brooks. And he wasn't accompanied. "Mississippi Lane," Silas instructed, steady and unruffled. "Get to my room. Under the bed is a wooden box. Fetch it to me. The riders were approaching, dusty plumes rising, creaking leather. And Malachi, he was grinning. Cora arrived as they reached the front gate. She held a wooden box. And inside, a Colt revolver, wrapped in oiled cloth. Silas buckled on the frayed holster as if it had never been absent from his hip. "You were law," Cora said, comprehension breaking over her. "Deputy sheriff. 2 territories over. A long time ago. He worked the chamber. Fully loaded. Some things you never forget." Malachi slid off the horse with a flourish, his coat flying in the breeze like some dime novel villain. The 3 men behind him remained mounted, their hands resting near their guns. "Mr. Ward," Brooks called out, voice smooth and practiced. "I think you have something of mine." Silas put a foot on the porch, hands visible. "But ready." "I don't think I do, Mr. Brooks. Everything on this land is mine, earned with sweat and honest work," Silas said firmly. Brooks smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "We both know why I'm here," he replied coolly. "The girl ran off during a bit of excitement at my saloon. Caused quite a stir. My other girls are worried about her well-being." "Is that right?" Silas asked, his voice tart, comical. Care doesn't tend to arrive with 4 men armed to the teeth. One of Brooks's goons, high-strung, with a thick scar down his face, rested uncomfortably in his saddle. "Boss, maybe we just take the girl and cut out. This rancher don't look like he'll make it easy." Brooks raised a hand, eyes never leaving Silas. "Mr. Ward, you seem like a reasonable man. I'm willing to offer compensation. Say, $50 for your trouble. Let's call it a misunderstanding." Silas nodded slightly. "Generous. But I'm not in the habit of selling people." The smile disappeared from Brooks's face like dust blown off glass. "Everyone has a price, rancher. The real question is whether you're smart enough to take the easy money, or if you'd rather we discuss the alternatives." Silas said nothing. Brooks gestured broadly toward the house, the stable, the fields stretching behind them. "You've done well here. Don't want to see anything happen to it. Fires happen in dry weather. Animals are easily spooked. Buildings crumble. And sometimes, people get hurt while trying to save what can't be saved." Silas didn't blink. His voice remained level, calm. "You should know something, Mr. Brooks. That girl you're hunting. She showed me what you did to her. The scars. The burns." Something more sinister seeped into his voice. "Men have done awful things, over land, over money, over pride. But a man that brands women like cattle? That's a special kind of dirt." Brooks's smile faltered. "Be careful, rancher. You make accusations like that, you could find yourself in trouble." "Oh, I'm not accusing you of something," Silas replied, cold as ice. "I'm making a promise." The silence between them strained, taut and hard. Brooks's men moved again, fingers inching toward their holsters, but something about Silas's immobility, the hard determination in his gaze, kept them back. At last, Brooks mounted himself back onto his horse. "This isn't finished, Ward. Not by a long way." As the horseman vanished in a swirl of dust, Silas whirled to see Cora sitting at the kitchen table, her face hidden in her hands. The fight had taken only minutes, but the impact lingered. "He'll return," she said softly. "Tonight, perhaps tomorrow. And next time, it won't be 3 men. Silas refilled a cup of coffee, his thoughts already running figures. "Tell me about the others, the girls who are still with Brooks. Do they want out?" Cora blinked in shock. "Of course they do. But wanting to escape and being able to, that is different. Brooks doesn't just threaten them. He tracks down their families, their children. He lets them know what will happen if they attempt it." "What about evidence?" Silas asked. "Has anyone ever attempted to go to the law?"
Narrated.
"Sheriff Dawson won't even hear me out. Says it's all rumor. And the time somebody managed to get close? Judge Whitmore dismissed the complaint. Said they lacked evidence. Brooks owns this town, Mr. Ward. Good men have tried to stand in his way, and they're gone now. Run out or dead." Not a word. Silas went to his desk and opened a frayed leather portfolio. There were letters, old case folders, and a badge he hadn't handled in 3 years. "Get it all down," he instructed. "Every woman's name, every date, every detail. Doesn't have to be important." She stared at him, bewildered. "Why? I told you, the local law's bought and paid for." "Local law isn't our only choice," Silas said, brandishing a sealed letter. "I still have friends in the territorial government. People who remember what I did at Deadwood Creek. They trust my word." Hope burned for an instant in Cora's eyes, snuffed out by fear. "If Brooks thinks you're constructing a case, he won't wait. He'll come for both of us." "I know." Silas walked across the room to a high cabinet and extracted a double-barreled shotgun. "Can you handle one of those? My dad showed me when I was 12. "Good." He gave her the gun and a package of shells. "Because you're right, he will return. And when he does, we're not leaving." Before she could answer, a noise froze them in their tracks. Voices, far away, echoing across the gloaming. And then a light on the horizon. Not the warm gleam of lanterns, but the hot orange fire of flame. A horseman was galloping in hard. As the horse thundered toward the ranch, Silas recognized it was Sheriff Dawson. His face contorted in fear, his horse dripping sweat. He just restrained himself before bellowing, "Ward! Thank heaven you're here. We need all able men." The silver dollar's on fire, and spreading fast. Silas emerged, Cora behind him. "How bad?" "Bad enough the entire district could go if we don't move quickly. Fire brigades overburdened." Then Dawson saw Cora, and his expression turned ugly. "What is she doing here?" "She's working for me," Silas replied matter-of-factly. "What started the fire?" Dawson stalled. "Nobody knows. Brooks thinks maybe it was done on purpose. By someone holding a grudge." Cora caught Silas's arm and spoke under her breath. "He's framing you. He's going to accuse you." Silas was already buckling his gun belt. "Bar the doors, Mississippi Lane. Keep your wits about you. In case trouble comes looking for you, don't hesitate." Then he faced the sheriff. "Let's ride. If there's something to be saved, we save it." They rode hard toward the growing smoke. But Silas knew in his bones, they weren't riding into a fire. They were riding into an ambush. The silver dollar was burning when they got there. Fire grasping for the black sky, townspeople struggling with buckets, shouting orders above the fire's deafening roar. And meanwhile, the town burned. Malachi Brooks stood alone, not panicked, not mourning, observing, quantifying. That wasn't the expression of a man losing it all. It was the expression of a man leading the chaos. "Ward!" Brooks hollered over the fire line. "Thanks for coming. Perhaps your conscience at last caught up with you." Dawson scowled. "What are you trying to say?" Brooks's voice grew, sharp and ringing. "Didn't you know? Mr. Ward was harboring one of my girls. The girl who disappeared just before my saloon somehow burned to the ground." His words sliced through the air, and people heard. The change could be felt by Silas. Suspicion, apprehension. Known faces now regarded him with suspicious eyes. Men who recognized their own livelihoods could hinge on taking Brooks's side. These weren't bad men, but they were frightened, and fear, Silas knew, could be as deadly as any rifle. "That's a rather rash accusation," Silas said levelly, his gaze steady. "Considering your saloon burned down while I was at my ranch with witnesses." "Witnesses can be bribed," Brooks shrugged carelessly. "And fires can be lit to burn slow, long enough for someone to get the perfect alibi." The rhythm of the bucket brigade slowed as more stopped to listen. Even Sheriff Dawson appeared conflicted, between fear of Brooks and his duty as a lawman. Then, something occurred that shifted everything. Out of the crowd emerged a young woman Silas had never met before. Her hands raw with labor, her eyes keen with determination. "That's a lie," she yelled, voice cutting through the smoke. "Malachi Brooks lit that fire himself, and I can prove it." Gasps swept the crowd. Brooks's guise for one moment shattered to reveal something dark, angry, and volatile beneath. "Now hold on, Betty," Sheriff Dawson said, shooting out a nervous hand. That's a pretty serious accusation you're making. But Betty didn't waver. From inside her dress, she pulled a small glass bottle, stained with traces of lamp oil. He told us to slip out the back, then poured this all around the main room. Said it was time to burn it down and start over somewhere else. Brooks's men started moving, intent clear, but the townsfolk, once passive, stepped in. The blacksmith moved in front of Betty. The general store owner blocked another thug's path. Even the banker's young clerk stood between them, fear etched into his face, but standing tall. "Sheriff," Silas said quietly, "I think you've got enough witnesses now to make an arrest." But Dawson didn't move. His hand hovered near his holster, but not toward Brooks. He was looking at Silas. "The way I figure it," Dawson replied, voice low, "we've got accusations flying in every direction. Best we take everybody into custody until we can get to the bottom of this." Behind Brooks, Silas caught sight of a smile beginning to creep back into place. The standoff grew deeper, until another voice broke through smoke and stillness. "I wouldn't do that if I were you, Sheriff Dawson." All eyes shifted. A weathered coat-clad, tall man moved forward, a silver badge glinting in the firelight. His gait was deliberate, commanding. "U.S. Marshal Thomas Crawford," he stated. "I've been tracking a series of crimes in 3 territories, and it appears they've brought me straight here." Brooks went white, but covered it up at once. "Marshal, whatever you believe, what I do know," Crawford cut in, "is that a woman named Sarah Chan fled from a place just like this one in Deadwood 2 months ago. She reported to federal agents about a ring smuggling women across territorial borders. And she told them about burn marks exactly like the ones we're hearing tonight." Sheriff Dawson's assurance broke down. "Marshal, I didn't know there was a federal case." "You weren't meant to be," Crawford replied. "Operations like this rely on corrupt or cowardly local officials to survive." He turned to Silas. "3 days ago, Mr. Ward sent a message to our office asking for help investigating suspected human trafficking. That's why I'm here." Silas blinked. He hadn't sent anything. But then he understood. Someone in the government, someone he'd worked with years ago, had remembered his name and acted. Betty moved forward. "Marshal, there are at least 5 more women still trapped. Brooks silences us by threatening our families." Brooks laughed. However, the tension in his voice had disappeared. "And I suppose you have evidence of these tales?" Crawford patted his coat, pulled out a fat folder. "As a matter of fact, we do. Bank accounts, depositions from women in 3 territories. And now, we have a witness to arson and intimidation." Brooks's men were getting restless. Hands drifted over guns, muscles tense as a drawn bow. The crowd felt it too, retreating and clearing around the standoff. "Marshal Crawford," Silas said softly, "they're preparing to draw." "I see them," Crawford said, never taking his eyes off Brooks. "Sheriff Dawson, I'm instructing you to arrest Malachi Brooks and his crew. Federal warrants. Human trafficking, conspiracy, arson." Dawson's hand shook. "Marshal, perhaps we should discuss." But Brooks acted. A piercing whistle and pandemonium erupted. One of his men drew first, shooting at Crawford. But Silas had been ready. His Colt was in his grip already, and his bullet hit the man in the shoulder, sending him spinning to the ground. Shots rang out. Crawford rolled behind a barrel and drew his own gun. Dawson, long delayed into action, charged at Brooks, but was brought down by another goon. Betty screamed and ran toward the general store. Citizens scurried in all directions. Some took cover behind structures. Others fled flat out. Amid the pandemonium came another sound, hooves, galloping, more riders coming. In the flickering light of the flames, Silas couldn't discern who they were, until they rode into sight. Leading them was Cora Lane, accompanied by 3 women Silas did not know. They jumped off their horses with fierce resolve. Past victims of Brooks, now prepared to take a stand against him. "Sounds like shots," Cora shouted, taking cover behind a wagon. "Are we too late?" "Right on schedule," Crawford replied. "Can you recognize that man?" "That's him," said one of the women. Older, eyes as hard as iron. And I've got the scars to prove it. Brooks stumbled. 2 of his men out and the third being held by Dawson, the predator was at last cornered. But he wasn't finished yet. You think this stops anything? He growled, moving back into the fire. There are men like me in every town from here to the coast. You stop me. 3 more take my place. Crawford moved closer, still holding his gun. Perhaps, but they'll know what happened here, and that might cause them to hesitate. Brooks continued back, his face distorted with desperation. I'll burn before I hang. That's your decision, Crawford said softly. But it was Betty who moved forward, the evidence bottle clutched in her hand. Her voice was firm with quiet strength. You said we were nothing, that no one would ever care, that no one would believe us. She held the bottle aloft, the light from the flames dancing off its surface. You were wrong. The struggle drained Brooks all at once. He glanced around, at the marshal, at the women he'd harmed, at the townspeople no longer averted, and at the sheriff finally pulling on his badge for good. Malachi Brooks, Crawford announced. You are under arrest for human trafficking, conspiracy, arson, and attempted murder. When the sun rose over the ruins of the Silver Dollar Saloon, Silas was on his porch, observing gold and pink stripes illuminate the horizon. Cora sat with him, coffee cup in hand, her features at last relaxed with serenity. Do you have any idea what you're going to do now? Marshal Crawford tells me there's federal assistance, she replied. Assistance in locating family members, job training, resettlement. She stopped, gazing out across the land. But I was thinking perhaps you might still need me around here, just while I sort things out. Silas smiled. A lot of work that needs doing. And speaking honestly, I've missed the companionship. The job's yours, for as long as you care to have it. Far in the distance, Crawford's wagon rumbled into the horizon, carrying Brooks toward justice. The nightmare was over, and Silas and Cora could finally breathe again for the first time in a long time. Sometimes, Silas believed, standing up against evil wasn't about heroic moments or impeccable timing. It was about setting a line and standing behind it, about choosing some things are worth the fight. And sometimes, just sometimes, when good people stand together, justice actually prevails.